Why do people continue to believe that self-promotion has more value than getting discovered?
In the grandest terms, we are exiting the Industrial Revolution, and I mean that we've been living that way, and it shaped our culture, it shaped the way we think, and we're entering a very different time. And quite frankly, a lot of employers don't get it yet. Now, the world we're going into is going to demand individualization, not automation, because the automation can do everything else, or it'll be able to. But this is what we can do, it cannot do, and it's vital. Being creative, creativity. That's a human quality. So human relationships are going to be more important, not less.
You are listening to Personalization Outbreak, a podcast about the collapse of traditional corporate standards in today's more personalized world. I'm Glenn Llopis. I'm a leadership strategist, author, contributor to Forbes, and founder of the Leadership in the Age of Personalization movement. On this show, I'm interviewing executives across multiple sectors to find out how the balance between standardization and personalization can exist.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Personalization Outbreak Podcast. Please excuse my voice. I know it's a little off, but it doesn't mean that the impact will be lost, especially when you hear from our guest today. But what's the issue that we're dealing with? I mean, most of us consider wisdom to be quality only achievable with age or by other people, that we don't see it possible for ourselves and only occasionally, that few people can define wisdom or how to attain it. We are all equally uninformed about potential's meaning, achievement, and connection to wisdom and living well. Yet wisdom and untapped potential reside in everyone, waiting to be released. Now, these words of wisdom come from our special guest, Ben Lytle. Let me tell you a little bit about Ben. Ben is a good human being. He's not only fueled with wisdom, he's motivated to share it. He's motivated to share it. Ask yourself, how often do you share what you know? Let that simmer. See, Ben is a self-made serial entrepreneur and CEO known for being ahead of the curve. See, he's the author of the book, The Potentialist, The Pursuit of Wisdom. Ben is best known as the founding CEO of Anthem, one of the leading U.S. healthcare plans, and Accordia, which became the world's sixth largest insurance broker. Now, before we get started, please click the like button below, share it with your colleagues, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and social media at Glenn Llopis. Ben, it is a gift to have you on the show, and thank you for your time. I know we're excited about getting started, but thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Glenn. I'm excited about doing this too. When I first heard of your show, the word personalization, of course, really resonates with me. A lot of my first book explains democratization, of which personalization is one of the most important attributes of that. And to add some other gravitas to the name of your show, one of the scientists that I respect, have a great deal of respect for, when he was asked on a panel recently, what is going to change healthcare and our health more than anything else, given all the longevity stuff going on and all the science in other fields, what most is going to change healthcare? And he said personalization. So you're doing wonderful work, and I'm thrilled to be here and be part of it.
Ben, I really appreciate that. And, speaking of healthcare, we all know its challenges, but we also know that in healthcare, personalization should come in two forms. Not only personalization to meet client or patient-centered needs, but also employees and leadership, because they're now consumers too.
Right.
So we've gone from an industry that has tried to move from volume to value to now having to personalize how it serves its patients, which, as we know, is part of value. And we got a lot of work to do there. But now we have to look at that through the lens of leadership. So what you talk about is so incredibly important. And so I'd like to, before we jump in to the power of wisdom, what motivated you? I mean, you've had a heck of a career in corporate America and healthcare, but what motivated you at this stage of your life to take on a 3-book series, especially the complicated subject of adapting to new realities, or as you call it, in your first book, right? So tell us a little bit about what's motivated you and actually why we're here today.
Yeah, well, Glenn, I've had a lifetime. Since I had a transformational event when I was 20 years old, where a young professor in a summer class, I wasn't even, it wasn't, I only took it because it was something to get me through the summer semester. And in that class, it was called Introduction to Personality. And he, paraphrasing, because this is many years ago, he essentially said to this small class of 15 people, you do not have to be anything anyone else expects you to be. And in fact, you shouldn't. Your job is to discover who you are and then to live that person fully. And for me, it was like a thunderbolt. And my parents I had wonderful parents. So they were very encouraging. We were, barely struggled financially, but they were rich in love and rich in encouragement. And they always told me, you can do anything you want. You're a smart kid. You work hard. You can do anything you want. But this was a different point, and it came in so strongly. And then I discovered over the next few weeks this incredible body of work about how you do that and how you live a life fully, and that the benefit, the output of that is wisdom and better decisions. And after all, it's decisions that shape our life and decide what our life means. So to me, that just made instant sense. And so I devoted much of my life to that as an avocation. What triggered the books, though, was I never intended to write a book. I had my years of being a public figure, and I enjoyed it, but I was also enjoying and treasuring my anonymity, and so
Sure.
relative anonymity. But it was really that I've always been a futurist. That's another thing that happened, because if you're a potentialist, you have to think of the potential of the human race as well as yourself. They go together. And so I've always paid a lot of attention to the future and where we're headed. So I follow a lot of news feeds on both tech. So I've always had my hands in technology and healthcare as an investor, and other industries for that matter. And I began to see about 2010, 2012, that the world really was changing, so was going to change at that point so dramatically, and very few people understood it. Almost no one. And there were good futurists out there, some people that and I've read all their books. But the problem is they only talk about the future, and sometimes it's not in the simplest terms, but also they don't say anything about how you get ready for it. What should you do? And so I decided, and so bottom line, I did this from my family. I said, okay, because I always love starts here and goes outward. And so I said, all right, well, my adult children are all brilliant. They're all successful, but they're busy. They're consumed with their lives and career. They're not paying attention to this. My grandchildren, who were then young, who are now all young adults, this is going to be their world. And they need to start to be thinking about this world. And so that led me to think, all right, I'm going to write a white paper, which that may sound strange to some of you, but to my family, it's not. They get white papers. So So I wrote a white paper, and the white paper turned into 3 white papers and began to be very large. And I went, oh, okay, this is not going to work. So I decided to do a self-published book just for family and friends. And then the person I was working with, who had come out of the publishing field, said, Mr. Lytle, this is really good stuff. Nobody's writing about how do you adapt to the future, and nobody describes the future as straightforward as you do. So you really should publish this. And so that's how I ended up doing it. So
Well,
the first book came out in 2022, and that one was really gives you a short summary of what the future is going to look like, and then gives you 7 things to do that if you'll do these 7, you'll be better off. You'll have a good grounding going into it. So they're like the 7 first steps a wise person would take, giving what's coming. Then the second book that I just came out with says, here's the ultimate adaptation. You go for your potential and develop your capacity for wisdom and learn how in the moment of making decisions to make sure they're wise. That's what this book's about. It's a layman's guide, but it's within the boundaries of psychology, and so it's not some off-the-wall guy's opinion. I had a consulting psychologist all the way through it. Matter of fact, had 3 or 4 of them that have all endorsed my book as well. So I'm very proud of it. I think if people will take it seriously, they'll learn this is doable for them. They can develop their potential, can achieve their potential, and become wise.
so you've already shared several wise nuggets. And I want to go back to something you said because I think it I think it lends itself us to go deeper on it. You know my work, that we're in this age of personalization.
Yep.
And the goal here is to respect standards of the past, but modernize those standards to account for what matters to the individual. And it supports exactly what you're talking about. But what you just said, the importance of discovering who you are.
Yep.
See, standardization has told people for years that one of the best ways to get promoted or to do well in life is you need to self-promote. And I've always asked this simple question: what has more enduring value, self-promotion or getting discovered?
Yeah.
And the answer, as you know, is getting discovered.
Absolutely.
So, in your opinion, why do people continue to believe that self-promotion has more value than getting discovered?
Well, in the grandest terms, we are exiting the Industrial Revolution. Even though people think about that's a long time ago, and there have been 3 industrial revolutions, the basic principles of standardization of labor, keeping your head down, yes, boss. That's been what most people have grown up with for 250 years. And I mean that we've been living that way, and it's shaped our culture, it's shaped the way we think. And we're entering a very different time. And quite frankly, a lot of employers don't get it yet. They don't get yet because they haven't done the research around democratization, and that these innovations have been coming for thousands of years. And that this is the big time now, because now the world we're going into is going to demand individualization. It's going to demand that we live to our potential, because there's not going to be as many of us, and we're going to have to, and the talents we're going to need going forward are those most human talents, those talents that only humans have, not automation, because the automation can do everything else, or it'll be able to, but this is what we can do, it cannot do, and it's vital. Being creative, creativity. That's a human quality. We don't even know for sure how it works. Much less duplicate it and you can't duplicate it in a math-based machine. It just doesn't work. Human relationships. Why do we want to connect with people? Why? Why is that so vital to us? Obviously, computers don't. They can't. So that's, again, something very special. So human relationships are going to be more important, not less. And then problem solving. We love to problem solve. That is who we are. Explore, find out, discover. Take something that everybody thinks is impossible and prove it's not. I've been doing that my whole career. And we all do that, and we all have a creative core. So that's, I think, what is needed. But the why it's so slow coming is we have to remember we're walking out of the mud of the last 250 years, and that's not to knock how we got here. I love where we are, and we ought to be proud of where we are. But that's not going to take us to the next level. That's what this whole adaptation thing is about. Cramming more information and knowledge in our brains, getting more degrees, is not going to get us where we need to go. Wisdom, making wise decisions, will.
I love the way you answered the question, and let me summarize it for our guest.
Please, that was a long answer.
No. It was perfect. Look, sometimes, it's interesting you said that. And in standardization, some would say, hey, Ben, we got to shorten that answer.
Yeah.
But when you move to wisdom, it takes time to understand how to learn, unlearn, relearn, repeat. That's what you're doing. So never be apologetic and helping all of us learn, unlearn, relearn, repeat, because you just gave us a master class on that. But what did you say? We have to unleash. This is why self-promotion has no value. Right. We have to unleash the depths of human potential, creativity, and capacity.
Right.
That's why getting discovered has longer range benefits, not just for that individual, but for a healthier whole. How did I do there?
Very good. Very good. Yeah. And I think, the fact that I would bet, and there's someone please write this down and hold me accountable when I'm gone.
Oh, come on, you got a long ways with us, but go ahead.
I'm going to be around a long time if I can do it. But I will bet that within, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 years, countries, organizations are going to start measuring the net creative output of those organizations. I heard an interesting statistic the other day, and it was a list of universities. And so this is kind of around net creative output to make the point. How would you possibly measure that? They counted the number of startup companies that had been launched based on universities. And at the top was Stanford with 450 startups within the last year. And there were tons of big name universities at the bottom who hadn't even launched 5 or 10. That's net creative output in a way to look at it. It's a way to say, we're here to help people, help the world through innovation. That's part of what we should be doing. How are we doing at that? That's the kind of thing that's going to be more and more important. And for all of us, being able to discover our creative core, which is our true self, and bring that out is going to be extraordinarily valuable. And no one should ever believe they're not creative. Remember, when people get told they're not creative today, or they think they're not, it's because their work and they tend to be more oriented towards left brain. But that doesn't mean they don't have it in them. They do. Everybody has a creative core. It's just finding what lights you up.
My friend, let me see if I can distill this one. Now that you've given me another set of things to think about. We often say in work and business, regardless of industry, what are we solving for? Mm-hmm. Like, what are we solving for? Right. And then we, as employees, leaders, then we come together, rally around what we know, and we go solve for it. But what we don't do, and what you're saying through net creative value, is this: it's knowing what you as an individual solve for.
Right.
We don't know that answer. I know what you solve for. You solve for igniting wisdom.
Right.
You're the potentialist. You
Yep.
are a wisdom igniter. That's what you solve for. And it has multiple arenas to apply. But you ask somebody, I'll give you an example. If someone is in charge of the supply chain, I'm just throwing something out,
Right.
and you're the vice president or chief supply chain officer, what do you solve for? Oh, I solve for to make sure that the supply chain is efficient. No, that's not what you solve for. That's what you do and what you're responsible for. But that's not what you solve for. Well, Glenn, what do I solve for? And through a series of exercises, many of which requires your work, they realize that they solve for a specific part of that journey. But when you don't know how you best contribute, you just see yourself as another cog in the wheel. And this
Yep.
goes back to the Industrial Revolution, and
Yep.
one that's now transitioning to be more personalized based on human potential and that index of creativity. And I'm hoping that what we're doing right now is helping people realize, you know what? This isn't very difficult. It's just that we need to shift the way we measure the work we do, the objectives that we state, and how we get to where we all want to go by looking at people as individuals and how we can best contribute to organizational goals. How did I do there?
I think that's good. What the second book, the premise behind one of the central premises behind this second book, The Pursuit of Wisdom, and this is not theoretical. I've done it. I've known other people have done it. I led that way. The people I knew, my job, I felt, was to bring out their best and help them discover their best in themselves. Same thing with the companies I led or companies I built. I'd look from scratch, look at it and say, what could we make out of this? What could we do here? Now you just turn that on yourself. What can I make out of this? What have I got here? And don't let your ego convince you you don't have anything. You got tons. It's down there and you just got to discover it. But from a practical standpoint, one of the principles of this book, which I will prove if you read it and you go through the practices, we already know 80 to 90% of everything we need to know to become wise from a practices standpoint. We already know it. We just don't use it in that way. And I'll give you an example. Let's say, you'd say to people, we're all in a state of mind. At every moment, there is a state. We're in a state of mind, and they change. And most of us think when we get in a bad mood, it's like it comes on us. Well, the fact of the matter is, you know how to switch that mood just like that. If you come home and you've got a small child or grandchild, or you've got a spouse or a partner, and they're distraught over something, you may walk in that door with that bad mood, and boom, you shift that quick. You're right there for them. Most people do that. And here's the interesting thing. When you do that, you never go back to the bad mood. Now, what if you did that on every single thing you do? So let's say I'm driving home and, maybe I'm just thinking about work. That's enough of work. I want to really think about me for a while. I want to reflect on me and my life and how I'm doing. And if I just think about that, how I have felt like that before, it's like an IP address. It'll take me right back there. So I can move to contemplation. I can move to reflection. I can move to gratitude. Gratitude's another one. If you suddenly can truly feel gratitude, it will shift your mood to a better place. And every time you do that, that you inside gets stronger.
So how
you get stronger.
So how does this connect back to what you argue in the book, The Pursuit of Wisdom, that present levels of fear and pessimism about the future are unhealthy and the opposite of the mindset we need to thrive in? Help us connect those dots.
Okay, so we're talking a global issue now down to a personal issue, because not everybody is pessimistic, and not everybody is by any means. We should never use the term "everyone does." That's defies personalization, and it defies reality. Everything is a bell curve, and there's always people on the bell curve. But I'll start with the global issue first. This is not imaginary. There were two major surveys. I think the one in the US was Gallup, but I'm not sure. And there was also one in the EU, all of these within the last 7 to 10 years. Both of them had the highest levels they had ever recorded about pessimism for the future. And that's a staggering thought when it shows a lack of wisdom, because one of the characteristics of wisdom is perspective. Look back in history, where have we been? Look at today and look forward. If you look back in history, most of history, life was brutal. Life was brutal. We barely survived. Up until 10,000 years ago, we were nomadic tribes barely surviving, on the edge of survival constantly. And then in the last 10,000 years, we've come so far that today most of us live, well, most of the world, even in some of the poorest places, is the best life human beings have ever had. So what is your basis to judge that it's going to be worse? And the thing that I would say, there's that the level of that is fear and anxiety. And that fear and anxiety is there because the world is changing faster than you're adapting to it. It's changing faster, and even if you're not consciously sitting around and thinking about it, it's changing faster and it's getting more complex. We all say we're too busy, right? Why is it we're so busy suddenly? Well, that's the pace of change, and it's making life more complex. Now, I'll hopefully on this show, I'll tell you what I think the answer is, how we'll get past this. But people react with fear, and when they react with fear, then they get pessimistic. The reason that's the absolute wrong mindset, first of all, I think it's fundamentally inaccurate. The world, I see, we're headed into the greatest period of human beings in history by a long shot. Things we can hardly imagine today, what we'll be able to do and the problems we'll be able to solve. A lot of that's going to come through technology, but it won't help us if we're still living unwisely.
And this is the point. We're at a state of massive reinvention. And I think this is part of what your message is that, look,
Right.
It's time to discover yourself, know yourself, and start pursuing what you know to be true, and get all this noise that's around you, remove it, start rethinking about who you're going to associate yourself
and for
with.
God's sake, the first thing to do that is realize that everything you see, most all of today, what is unfortunately called news is not news. What most of we hear out of politicians today is the same deal, and it's essentially to scare the hell out of you, get you scared, so you'll pay attention. First of all, is get you to read that article. And you can do your own test. I run through the newscasts. I've got an app that does that. And I count how many of them are negative, or actually they are catastrophic. We're going to have a catastrophe. It's going to end the world, or really something bad, compared to something that actually speaks to the hope of the world and the good things, because there's tons of it. I mean, my news feeds are all about scientific innovation and what entrepreneurs are doing. It's fabulous. But they're 8-2. Do your own test. I'll bet it doesn't get above 7-3 on any day that are negative to positive. And I'm not talking about a little bit negative. It's really negative. The business model, unfortunately, of news and the business model of politicians today is the same thing. If it bleeds, it leads. And I know of several good friends who were leading Emmy Award-winning newscasters who left the industry because they could not stand it the way it was anymore. So stop. First act of wisdom. Know that is someone's trying to sell you something, and don't buy it anymore. Make your own decisions. There are legitimate sources you can go to. Don't buy it. And so that's a start. But I don't want to make it sound it's all like media and politicians. If we didn't buy it, they wouldn't keep selling it. So you got to quit buying it.
Well, and that's why we need to discover ourselves. But
Yeah,
but back to people leaving certain industries. Look
right.
what's happening in private equity.
Sure.
It's a whole new game. People
Right.
that were part of developing private equity are now getting out of there. I mean, the expectations now on people and processes just for money are actually sacrificing at the people at their own expense of discovering their potential. So let's go back to the fundamentals here.
I want to
How
make
do you,
sure, yeah, I
sure,
want to make sure that I've got one thing there because I feel really strongly about it.
go for it.
There is absolutely nothing wrong with making money or making money for investors. If you don't do that, all of your pension plans are in deep trouble.
No
So
doubt.
all of your 401k plan. The only thing it's not an either or, and that's where we always get in trouble in life is looking at things as either or. Myself, my son, and many entrepreneurs that I know, and I would say the vast majority of innovators and entrepreneurs, try to do profit with a purpose. We want to bring something into the world that needs to be here. That's innovation. And it's innovation that lifts people far more than people who try to do good works. I hate to say it's bad news, but people who solely are trying to follow a cause, if you go back and look at history and the arc of history, what's lifted us is innovation. So innovation's core, and it's also right out of our creative core, right? So that's, I think the right thing for people is to just always remember, search for the opportunities to do the right thing, build a legitimate business, create profits for mostly pensioners is where this money goes these days, and do that with your heart. Give your whole heart to it. But that's the way to look at it. It's
Hey,
not an either.
so what do you say to those that are not ready to use their hearts?
Here's your answer. I mean, and I'm not saying just my book. There are other programs out there that are wonderful, mindfulness, things like that. But you have to start with you. You can't just look at the world and complain about it. You can't look at everybody else. Oh, they're all awful people. Well, you're one of them. You got to start with you. So you start with yourself for me, it's very simple, Glenn, and it's sort of the core of all this work. For many years, I get up in the morning, I look in the mirror and go, oh boy, you're getting old, dude. But I look in the mirror, and I've done this since I was in my early 30s. I look at myself in the mirror and I go, I will do my best to be my best and leave the world and the people I meet along the way a little better than I found them. Now, why a little better? Let's unpack that a little bit. Doing my best. If I do my best, what more can life ask of me? What more can I ask of myself? And some people say, well, how do you know what your best is? You'll know, because there's only you and you. You'll know. And then to be my best. Being my best is discovering my potential and fully living it. And that includes becoming wise and making wise decisions. I can't keep making really unwise decisions and say I'm there. I got to keep working at it. And then why a little bit is sort of a gift from Mother Teresa. She once is quoted, and I honestly don't know if it's directly her quote or not. If you want to save the world, go home and take care of your family. And that's where it starts. You take care of yourself first, and you bring yourself to your potential. Then go out to your family, do your very best to instill in them the belief in themselves, as my parents gave me that gift. Their belief in themselves, discover themselves, guide them, and then go out beyond the next circle. Do it in your work, do it in your community, do it in your church, or your synagogue, wherever you go. Those are the ways, to me, you do it. But it all starts with that one commitment to yourself. I'll do my best today. And when I lay my head on the pillow at night, that's the true meaning of success. How did I do today? I did okay. I gave my best. I know I did. Or here I was distracted. Darn it. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to do my best there. That's it.
You've really given us the wisdom to start rethinking about how strong our foundation is. And this is what I'm gathering from this discussion. You're trying to help us navigate a world that from the outside looks complicated uh, and uncertain, to one that really says, look, when you begin with yourself for the betterment of the whole, what's in front of us is an immense world of opportunity. That's what
Right.
I'm getting from your message.
Yeah.
And go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Well, I think you said something though that uh, I know people are, I'm sure, still disappointed trying, okay, what is wisdom? What is wisdom? Well, first of all, think of wisdom as the highest human achievement. I've interviewed literally thousands of wise people that I felt were wise, that I admired over my long career, and I kept very good notes. One thing about them is that they were always calm. They were always optimistic. I never knew a pessimistic wise person. And they had a great sense of they were humble. They realized they can only do so much, and that it's not their job to save the world other than what they can touch with themselves. They have to do their best to be their best. That's the idea. They all sort of, in many ways, said the same things. But one of the things you learn, there are things that you have to learn along the way. And I address as many of those in the book as I can. And then I give you references to go elsewhere and I'm talking about the book, The Potentialist, The Pursuit of Wisdom. One of the most common problems we have today, and therapists deal with this a lot, is distortions of reality that we walk around with. Those come from our ego. And I think they've counted up maybe 25 of them. I don't think there's an actual person list, but one of them you mentioned, which is certainty. Certainty is an illusion. There is no certainty. There's no certainty for us. We have to go through a world uncertain and be strong enough and comfortable with that. Okay, I can't predict everything, and I sure as heck can't control things. I can't control everything. So once you start to see the world as it is, seeing the world as it is, not as you wish it would be, seeing the world as it is, and saying, okay, I'll improve it where I can, but certain things just are, and understanding that there are distortions that today, most of us are looking at the world through like a funhouse mirror. And what we have to do is to get rid of that funhouse mirror and see it as it is.
But to do that, excuse me, but you said something important here. But in order to do that, and I'd love for you to go as deep as you want on this, or as little, it's up to you. But you have to know your truth.
Yeah.
Because, but oftentimes we live other people's truths. Right. So how do you live your truth?
You have to get to know you, and that takes some work. You can't do it going from task to task to task to task to task, never taking time for yourself. Does it take 2 hours a day or going up to the top of the mountain? No, not at all. Everything what I'm proposing, what I say in the book, this costs you no money, maybe the price of a book. I mean, mine or someone else's, but maybe the price of a book. Not very expensive. And then an hour a day, but not an hour a day, even of a solid hour. It's 15-minute increments. It's the right place. When you lay down in bed at night, don't get in bed stirred up, exhausted, or so, that you don't have any time for yourself. And take just 10 or 15 minutes and reflect on your day. And make sure in that you find place for gratitude. I'm alive another day. A lot of people aren't. And had a good day. If I look around, I've got a full tummy, I have a warm place to live, a warm bed to crawl into. But take that moment, and I guarantee you that'll start changing your life. When you wake up in the morning, same thing. Wow, another day.
So you've made us, I love this. And by the way, you described my father when you were talking about wisdom. My dad lasted until he was 97 years old. He
Wow,
was
good
50 when I was born. But part of what I'm walking away from this too is we're living in the most opportunistic time in modern history.
incredible.
What do you tell those who are having trouble accepting that fact? And what do we do to get out of this? What do we do to help people and organizations get out of this rut? I know that's an important part of the book, and I know
Right.
it's an important part that you want to share with people. What do we do?
Well, first of all, one of the first ones says quit taking what you hear as news and what you take as political dogma as if it is truth. You cannot do that. You have to be wise enough to say, someone's trying to sell me something, and I have to be wise enough to know what they're trying to sell me and say, I ain't buying, or I'm buying on a different, I'm going to go really look at it, look at both sides, however you wish to go about it. Important step to start unwinding that pessimism, because it's a megaphone today. It's just a megaphone. And you can do that. And I'm not the first person to say that. Many people have been saying that for years. The second thing is to stop focusing out there. The world's so bad. Other people are so bad. Because that pollutes your mind, and it's not reality. Reality is a bell curve, a diverse bell curve. So you take any aspect of human beings, and there's going to be a bell curve. My experience is when I hear people going on and on about how bad the world is, I said, well, let me tell you something. Let's do an experiment. Let's walk down the street and let's say hi to people and smile. And I'll bet you, and let's maybe stop a couple and talk. I'll bet you we'll find a lovely person within 3 blocks. If we go more than 3 blocks, something's wrong. Probably in the wrong neighborhood, or we're wearing the wrong clothes, or but it is simply not reality that the world is a bad place. And today, if you another thing, look at the historical numbers. The number of, despite all the things we hear, we do not have a single major war. Most of humanity, there have been gigantic wars marching 18 to 22 years olds out into a field and slaughtering them constantly and creating poverty and all kinds of horrible things. We don't have that anymore. We haven't had it since 1993. First Gulf War is the last major war. It's the only one we got going is in the Ukraine, and we have a madman in Russia who keeps it going. But these guys will die off because totalitarianism and democratization don't go together. So totalitarianism is, I think, in its last gasp. That's why they're so desperate, because they can't control their borders. They can't control their electronic information getting into their countries. So they're scared to death. Their way of life's going away. So that's why I'm optimistic. Look at the perspective. Look back. Look at where we've come. Now look at where we could go, particularly with the technologies and the innovation broader than technology, the innovation that's going our way. So that's what I say to people who are and I think for me it's pragmatic optimism, meaning my argument's better than yours. You tell me your argument. Let's argue about it.
Yeah, you know
in a
what's
polite way.
yeah, and you know what's interesting here? I mean, I know that you're the potentialist, but I also think that you're the fundamentalist, because you cannot be the potentialist without having mastery of the fundamentals. And I think this is what you're really also what I'm taking out of this is that you're almost telling us, hey, slow down a minute, understand your own reality. Don't let outside forces distract you. Discover from within, reestablish and reclaim and rediscover your identity, and know that you actually have more influence and more capacity to turn your current state around than you think you do.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting from this.
Yeah,
So,
and I will say, Glenn, you're not going to get from where you are today, particularly if you have a negative mindset or you're down on yourself, you
of
don't think
course,
you're capable of doing those things. You're not going to get there by yourself without a different point of view. That's part of what this book was written for, is to help people understand there is a beautiful thing inside you. and you have to find it. And it's there, you're right about fundamentals. And it's logic. Every single living thing on this earth, everything, every plant, every animal inside them is driven to do what one thing. They're driven to reach their full potential. Every flower, go to its full bloom. Every tree. And it's striving and it's fighting. And for some, it's harder than others. I love the vision of we've all seen it. If you happen to, I live in the desert, so you see this very often. You go out and there's a tree growing through a rock. And I can imagine that if that tree was human, it would go, wait a minute, why did I get a rock? All the other trees get this nice soil. It's easy. Why did I get a rock? Well, because maybe you had more potential. And so you needed the greater stress. But inside of us, why would nature create everything else to have that drive? And we don't. We don't have two sets of rules. We are a species. We follow the same rules as all the others. And so inside of us is that mechanism ready and waiting to help us become our full potential. And our full potential is becoming wise, making good decisions, and living well, because that's what wisdom is. I love the definition of wisdom. At its basic, it is the art of living well. Isn't that beautiful?
No, it's beautiful, and it's inspiring too.
And the art of living well. Then someone say, well, okay, well, what's the art of living well? Going through your life, making better decisions consistently and increasingly based on broader perspective, broader knowledge that you continually accumulate, so that because at the end of your life, it's our decisions that define us. And that's what we forget. It's our decisions, not the government's, not our neighbors, not somebody else. Our decisions define our life and what it meant.
So Ben, as we wrap it up, I've got one final question, and this takes us back to kind of your foundation of how you became the successful leader that you are and the wise individual that you're now sharing with others. Let's go back to healthcare a moment. You've been a thought leader in health and healthcare for decades. And this is a huge, huge topic right now in America and all over the world. What do you think are the most significant challenges that we face, and what solutions can we expect moving forward? What do you think? Where's this industry headed?
So it's like all of our institutions. When pace of change accelerates, we adapt much faster than our institutions or big organizations, or any organization, but particularly big ones, because they have multiple constituencies, stakeholders, and so they have to consult all those. A lot of them are vested in the status quo. They don't want to change. As individuals, we can change like that when we want to. Online shopping, good example. Boom. Whole retail industry is turned on its ear. Entertainment, theaters are out, streaming's in, Uber, taxis out, Uber's in. But we change very fast. These organizations don't. The institutions change the slowest of all. And so healthcare is an institution. By institution, it's like government, mass media, religion. They're big, complicated. They have kind of quasi-legal status. And so healthcare is not changing nearly as fast as we need it. A lot of words are being spoken, but the actions aren't changing. The personalization and democratization are the critical thing. That means cutting out as many of these middlemen steps as we can to go directly to the point of care. It means personalizing our care so that what my care is defined by me. It's becoming far more predictive and in healthcare so that we can prevent rather than cure. And all of those are very broad principles, and I bet every CEO of every major healthcare institution can give an eloquent speech on it. What's not happening is moving there faster. And I that in part is because wrapping your head around it, Also, I would say one thing is the politicians on both parties are fighting a 50-year-old battle that does not matter. It just does not matter. It doesn't matter. You can go, there are plenty of evidences that government-run healthcare is rotten. It always creates two levels of care. It works fine in tiny companies and countries not even there so well. It doesn't work in a big, diverse society. But also, just saying free market, well, what does that mean? That's not an answer either. So quit fighting that and start asking yourself, how do we take advantage of these marvelous technologies that will now allow us to personalize everything? We're going to live in a bespoke world. It's happening. And you give it another 10 or 15 years, everything in our lives is going to be bespoke. So we need to be thinking about that in healthcare right now. That needs to be what and I would say to the leaders of those organizations, if you don't have your top people right now, and you haven't charged them with, I want you to come back with me to a plan of how we democratize this entire institution, every product, every service. How do we do that? Then I don't think you're doing your job.
Well, and to do that, they're going to have to discover themselves. They're going to have to know what their potential is, and they need to know how they're most relevant in this specific moment in time. And they're going to have to know how to lead in personalization, because you can't deliver personalized care if you don't know how to lead with personalization.
And it's okay to start small. I mean, take for example the shortage of clinicians right now. I don't know, probably your audience has already experienced it. Many people are starting to take months to see a specialist. You're more likely going to see, you're going to likely see a nurse practitioner or someone else as a gatekeeper to that specialist before you ever see them. More and more, it's what primary care does is getting harder and harder to define and their value in the system. I think there is a huge role there, but it's mostly probably going to devolve to nurse practitioners and physicians' assistants. But we could start right there and say, okay, we're 1 million nurses short. A third of what nurses do has nothing to do with patient care. We can fix that with AI fast. Why aren't we after that? Going crazy to solve it. Another big problem historically has been educating patients. AI can educate patients massively. The best experts in the world talking to any patient who wants to talk to them. We could do that in a year, in 2 years. Why aren't we doing that? Instead of talking about how we make our health system bigger, buying more land, building more buildings, consolidating more doctors, that's an industrial age solution. It's backwards to where we need to be going. And so that's what I would challenge them to do, is take this seriously and say, I want progress next week. I want to see some stuff going on here that's taking work off nurses so their jobs are better. And so they won't have such high turnover, that we can attract more nurses. Why does it take 4 years to train a nurse? A lot of places can train a nurse in 2 years. I'll bet if we really worked at it, we could train decent nurses intensively in a year. Why aren't we focusing on that? So those are the things that I would love to see more leadership. And again, government, quit fighting over who's paying the bill. Just focus on doing on how we're going to deliver care 10 years from now. And because it's going to take time in a healthcare system as big and complex as ours to get there. So that's my answer. And I think there's a coherent set of policies here that could be put in place and plans. And I've got a lot of work that I've done on that, but I'm sure many others have too. And I hope people will pick those plans out of the drawer and say, let's go do it.
We got to have you on another session, just healthcare, because you have so much to share. But I want to thank you, Ben, for taking the time to help us understand how we can get back on track by discovering who we are, the potential that we have in our pursuit of wisdom, the potentialist, Ben Lytle. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you. Enjoyed it, Glenn.
And as we end every show, when you lead in the age of personalization, you will see things that others don't, do what others won't, and keep pushing when prudence says quit. Have a great day, Ben.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Personalization Outbreak. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. If you enjoyed the content, visit ageofpersonalization.com to check out our free streaming video series and learn how to get involved in the movement. I'm Glenn Llopis. I wish you a good day, and remember, without strategy, change is merely substitution, not evolution.